Birds of Prey is now out in cinemas, and many audiences are hoping for it to be an improvement on its predecessor, Suicide Squad. A movie that has garnered a loyal fanbase, but is also considered by many to be one of the worst comic book films ever made. However, maybe a better Suicide Squad movie actually came out 2 years ago. Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay, a straight-to-video animated movie that's based on the same DC Comics series. Howdy folks, Jamboriki here. Grab your baseball bat and boomerang as I compare these two Suicide Squad movies. And keep in mind, I'm going to be referring to the extended cut version of the live-action Suicide Squad movie in this video, not the theatrical cut. Let's do this! In the live-action Suicide Squad, a government official called Amanda Waller starts up her own team of supervillains, including Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, and Diablo, assigning them on the mission to defeat the supernatural force known as Enchantress, who has possessed the body of Dr. June Moon. Waller also put Soldier Colonel Flag in charge of leading this squad of criminals. Flag himself finds this to be a personal mission because he's in love with the Doctor. Meanwhile, Joker is hatching a plan to break Harley free from the prison's clutches. Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay follows the same setup, except Waller chooses Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Tiger, Killer Frost, and Copperhead, naming the squad Task Force X. Their mission is to retrieve a Get Out of Hell free card, and the squad are up against other villains after the past two, including Zoom and Vandal Savage. So, an immediate problem with Suicide Squad is that its first half an hour is dedicated to character profiles, spending a whopping amount of time detailing each and every squad member's backstory. This makes for unnatural and forced character introductions, plus delays the momentum for the bigger story. You might argue, well, how else could have the film done this? Look no further than Hell to Pay. Waller goes from cell to cell, explaining each prisoner's history as the team's size grows, all under a few minutes. It cuts to the point in a straightforward manner while keeping the intrigue of these supervillains, instead of giving us a 25-minute lesson in comic book lore. After we've sat through 4 or 5 lengthy character introductions in Suicide Squad, you'd think that the story would get going, right? From this point on, we're just watching the squad meandering through an empty city, whispering to each other about escaping, despite already being shown the consequences if they do, or letting Harley dump psychoanalysis on everyone as if audiences are too dumb to read character subtext.
And here's one now. Japanese, female, mid-20s, 5'5", good health, athletic, and an only child with deep-seated father issues.
Plus, each criminal is clueless about the bigger picture or what their mission entails. This city isn't even claustrophobic or atmospheric. It's bland, very bland. There's too much open space and the grimy colours are dull to look at. Sure, we get some action scenes, but it's mainly combat against nameless, undefined minions, each of which mean nothing to the squad, because the Colonel refuses to explain what's happening until later. In Hell to Pay though, the mission is clear as day to the team. They want to avoid the consequences of bailing, their opponents are varied, and we're given a road trip adventure that takes us to a wide array of locations. The characters are not stuck in one boring set for ages, even switching vehicles at one point. Squad members will penalise those who want to escape too, so there's no time wasted on planning a getaway. The focus is on keeping the ball rolling and finding fun ways to make their mission full of varied obstacles, while also sometimes changing the team dynamic around to spice things up. Sure, Deadshot gets distracted at one point to pursue his daughter, but he faces consequences for this sidetrack because Waller strips him of his leadership role.
You don't know how close you came to an out-of-body experience.
I took a side trip, so what?
Tiger's in charge.
You heard the woman.
The characters are also given chances to simply just chill out in the motor van, so we can have natural relationship building and see how these criminals feel about the situation at hand.
Which exit, cowboy?
Waller said to keep going north until we hear from her.
You don't suppose she really believes this mumbo-jumbo, do you?
What?
You know, that you can skip hell.
Beats me. I always thought this was hell, Captain Kangaroo.
We buy that these characters are connecting in some way in an organic pace, Sure, there's always an undertone of apathy between the gang, but the film never frames their unity as something too sentimental. We have to wait an hour and a half into Suicide Squad before it lets its protagonist settle down for deeper relationship building, making their triumphant roar of camaraderie in the finale feel last minute and disingenuous. Most of the members of this Suicide Squad are here for the gimmick of their powers, physique, or weapons, with only Deadshot, Diablo, and Harley Quinn given any kind of development. Will Smith lacks his natural charm and charisma for Deadshot, going against his usual persona, showing that maybe villainy isn't in his acting wheelhouse. Deadshot's father figure role in the squad is a nice idea, but the film very rarely lets him play the part of daddy.
Harley, don't you stop acting like a drunken stripper.
You want to tell me what the hell's going on then? Cause I smell a rat.
If they don't blow our heads off, we'll have to fight our way out of this city. I need you to play nice with the other children.
Diablo's pacifism in a forced mission that requires his powers is an interesting idea until he gives in and starts using his flames after Deadshot riles him up. So that goes nowhere. While I know that she has a big fan base, I wasn't that fond of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. She's a watered down take on the Harley Quinn I know, Hollywood's more marketable version of her, with far more focus on her sex appeal and fashion. She's missing that tough girl energy that I love about her, as if the studio wanted to dilute her personality in fears that writing her too loud and abrasive would make her less attractive.
Why do you eat people?
Gives me the power.
Would you like to eat me?
Hell no.
Aw, why not?
I don't want your crazy.
The film also attempts to throw audiences off by introducing a squad member called Slipknot, who gets killed for escaping right away. It's supposed to be a shock, but considering that he was one of the only ones to not get a flashy character profile, that's not a clever twist. We knew that he would be disposable and not a primary character. Flag is your typical military official character, nothing complex, but he does his best to keep everyone in line. While Waller does have the advantage of being able to blow up out-of-line squad members, they need a leader, and Flag seems like a reasonable choice. Then there's Katana, possibly the most forgettable cast member, because she's mainly sidelined, and her purpose is far from necessary. With Flag's men and the throat bombs already serving as ways to control the criminals, it is a bit of an overkill to also throw in a lady who is good with a sword too. It's obvious that she's only here to set up how Harley Quinn defeats Enchantress, which begs the question, why not give Harley Quinn her own sword? Hell to Pay lets actual squad members be the leaders, which does help to stop the film's cast from overcrowding, but also raises the question, how much faith can you put in these criminals to lead? Yes, their lives are at threat by Waller, so they can't exactly abuse their leadership position, but still, it's maybe not the most dependable approach. I mean, let's not forget that Deadshot, who is the first to be appointed leader, later runs off to find his daughter. To be fair though, giving the criminals a sensible leader in Suicide Squad takes away a lot of potential for fun anarchy, restricting the squad to mainly walking around for most of the film and rarely being given a chance to be defiant or embrace their off-kilter personalities. That's the advantage that Hell to Pay has, and what makes it the far more entertaining film. These characters have more freedom in comparison, but are still aware of the danger of being blown up, which inspires a frantic madcap tone to the movie, while also reminding itself that these characters are still puppets. It's the kind of over-the-top action romp that the live-action film clearly wanted to be. Not to mention, the power that comes with the leadership role adds some engaging tension to the squad, because these are characters who are starving for some sense of free reign.
I answer to a higher authority.
Higher than Waller? That sounds like blasphemy, mate.
I'd say maybe we should take this outside, but that's up to her.
Settle down, lovebirds. It's too early to start losing your heads just yet.
Sure, it's a big risk for Waller to take, but in her mind she's a god, so she's going to be willing to take those kinds of chances. Hell to Pay only lets a few characters get development, but it chooses wisely and utilizes each squad member's backstories to the narrative's benefit. Deadshot's guilt over neglecting his daughter consumes him so much that he forgets his responsibility. Tiger's loss of his wife makes him resent Deadshot for not appreciating his daughter more, to the point where they both break out into a fight. Frost's history of childhood abuse that led her to killing her parents indicates that she's a woman who translates her trauma into cold, merciless apathy, foreshadowing her eventual betrayal of the squad. This Deadshot is snarky and deadpanned. While Christian Slater has more charisma compared to Will Smith, a sentence I thought I'd never say, Slater plays the part a bit too straight, sometimes making his quips sound less snappy and cheeky.
Like I said, this one is off the books. No hotels.
Road trip!
I guess that'll save us from having to explain him to the concierge.
But I do love what the movie does with Harley Quinn. She's allowed free rein to be her usual eccentric self, while also being a helpful contribution to the team, especially in combat. She's hilariously silly and adorable, with her childish personality playing off well against the more stone-faced characters.
I want to set up a perimeter. Boomerang, you take the north side. Harley. Where's Harley?
We're coming to get you, Frosty!
Shit.
How's that leadership thing going?
This is the Harley Quinn that Suicide Squad needs.
The Zone guy, he disappeared. I looked around and, oh hi, Wally, how's tricks?
Ugh, she would live.
Now, sure, the film does narrow Copperhead down to being a scary snake guy, with the joke that he hisses at innocent citizens, but unlike Slipknot, the film uses his lack of character to its advantage. It suggests that maybe he's the first to try and escape, but surprisingly, he's convinced to stay, and the movie keeps him. We think he's meant to be disposable, but he's kept alive until the finale, which makes his death more alarming than Slipknot's. With the movie's prologue already serving as a demonstration of what happens to those who betray Waller, there really is no point of wasting a potential main character to illustrate squad member punishment. The live-action Suicide Squad will frequently flash back to Harley Quinn and Joker's relationship. Not only do these scenes fail on a dramatic level, because I don't buy that this Joker managed to charm or woo Harley, as he spends so much time chewing the scenery or pretentiously monologuing that it's hard to believe that he could enchant a professional psychologist into loving him.
I have proved I love you. Just accept it.
Got it. I am not someone who is loved. I'm an idea.
But what's worse is that these scenes add up to nothing in the long run. They're not essential to the movie. Heck, Joker doesn't even enter the main story properly until much later on, and his rescue attempt did not require audiences to know the whole Harley and Joker saga. A relationship that needed far more development but is chopped up into brief moments is the romance between Flag and Moon. Moon has a strong connection with our main villain, and her bond with Flag is meant to be the emotional root of his motives. Yet Harley and Joker share way more screen time together, most likely because the studio wanted to pander to fans of these two, not because their relationship was key to the film's main event. Hell to Pay knows what should be center stage, never letting something superfluous dominate the narrative. It's all about the card, and the film refuses to forget that. Yes, I did say that Deadshot goes off to find his daughter in one scene, but this distraction has a purpose. To show Deadshot that his head is not entirely in the mission, and that he needs to keep focused if he really wants the reward of freedom. Nothing in Hell to Pay screams this is cutting room floor material, making for a much tighter movie-watching experience. Yeah, I'm sure that Suicide Squad's theatrical version is a bit snappier than the extended cut, because it cuts out 15 minutes, but nothing replaces what's taken out, so it's not a perfect fix, and deleting these particular scenes won't improve the overall monotonous pacing of the adventure itself. Now, Suicide Squad opens up by asking the question, who can take on the next meta-human threat?
What if Superman had decided to fly down, rip off the roof of the White House, and grab the President of the United States right out of the Oval Office? Who would have stopped him?
But if that's the case, then why assemble a team including a big strong crocodile man, an Australian who is good with boomerangs, a crazy girl with a bat, and someone who is really good at aiming his gun? This is not a crack team that's best suited for taking on Enchantress, a supernatural force of godlike strength. Only Diablo has powers that could match a witch's. When Flag poses how dumb this idea is, Waller acts all mysterious and says,
"What are you really up to?"
It's a need to know, and all you need to know is you work for me.
I can change with a phone call.
But this never pays off. She has no big plan, so there's no reason why she chose these prisoners as a team of anti-god assassins, making Waller look kind of stupid.
In a world of flying men and monsters, this is the only way to protect our country.
Hell to Pay proposes no such question, as this team isn't designed for the purpose of defending Earth from the next evil god, letting the team focus on a mission to retrieve a card, with the main suspect being a male stripper who used to have superpowers. So Waller doesn't seem naive for her squad member choices. It's only when Task Force X dive deeper down the rabbit hole that they come face to face with more supernatural foes. Heck, the film's prologue shows that Waller's task forces usually go after everyday normal gangsters. Suicide Squad's Enchantress isn't even a well-rounded or unique antagonist. She's yet another blockbuster movie supervillain with a doomsday machine, a horde of minions, and a desire to rule the world, spending a lot of the film writhing around or sending off her henchmen. Sure, she does have a tragic story of being kept prisoner by Waller, just like the Squad, but the film doesn't want to explore that, and lets Deadshot dumb down the moral ambiguity of Enchantress to something more black and white.
Lady, you are evil!
Hell to Pay's villains aren't complicated either, but the film uses them to the story's advantage, as they serve as examples for why someone would want the card. They each have their own reasons for desiring this card, many of them thoroughly believing in its magic. It's all about the lengths villains go to get hold of the card, what the card means to each character, and everyone trying to outwit each other to be the keeper of the card. The dynamic is always changing too. It's never a straightforward alliance between these villains. They will turn against each other or even invite a Suicide Squad member to join them. It's all unpredictably exciting. Is it a simple conflict? Yes, but the film puts its basic setup to great use by pitting everyone against each other, sort of demonstrating a social experiment, in which we get to see what a Get Out of Hell card would push people afraid of eternal damnation to do. So the major themes of Suicide Squad are freedom and control. It explores how higher authorities can abuse their power in the name of protecting the public, and all the characters labeled as menaces are being subjected to suffering by these apparent good forces. However, the movie never does anything with this concept by its conclusion, choosing to kill off the Enchantress instead of showing her mercy, letting Waller keep her position as deity, and the bullying guard never facing a comeuppance, bounding Harley to still being Joker's property, and sending the Squad back to jail by the movie's end, with some superficial cosmetic rewards to keep them happy. I find it to be a shallow finish to a movie that had a lot of potential to cleverly deconstruct the whole hero versus villain dynamic, apathetically reducing important subjects like authoritative abuse, criminal reformity, and prisoner rights to something apparently not worth challenging. Hell to Pay may be mainly a fun action movie, but it has a fascinating spiritual debate on the existence of an afterlife, which inspires interesting discussion between the Squad.
There's not a morning goes by I don't get up wondering if this will be my judgment day. Will I end up with the woman I love? Or face a lake of hellfire with the same vermin who brought me down? The only thing any of us can hope for is divine intervention. Only through the grace of God can we be saved from eternal damnation.
And we learn that Deadshot is a non-believer.
What about you, gunman? You think the card could wipe away all the blood you've spilled? Or don't you believe in heaven?
I believe in heaven, Boomer. Every time you shut your mouth.
However, by the movie's end, Deadshot, a man who has lived a life of taking lives away with swift aim, chooses to use the card to help Tiger have a peaceful death, showing compassion after years of assassinations, only to realize that the card actually works, and he maybe finds a new faith that expands his perspective. Not only that, his completion of the mission rewards him with freedom, and he uses his fresh optimistic outlook on life to confidently restore his broken relationship with his daughter, putting his criminal life behind him at long last. Yes, Suicide Squad lets Deadshot see his daughter again, but at the cost of staying in chains, making for a far less satisfying end to his character's arc, because the corrupted forces that abuse their power still win, and his bond with his daughter remains complicated due to Deadshot's prison commitment. It's not an intensely progressive step forward, but more of a way for Captain Flag to show off his power while keeping his thumb on Deadshot. Sure, it's nice of Flag to let Deadshot see his daughter, but it's a half-hearted compensation for his heroism, it ignores the bigger problem within the prison, and it's a gesture that will only make things more awkward for the little girl.
I gotta go.
Are you coming back?
Yeah, I'm working it out. All right? I promised my friends that I would just go without killing them all. Bring it in.
What also happens in Hell to Pay's ending is the downfall of Task Force X, proving that Waller's experiment was too flawed and that she can't control everything. While she does get to keep her job and retrieve the card, her position as God is exposed as a joke, plus Deadshot's redemption demonstrates that he is the more righteous hero in contrast, and that Waller's deity means nothing in the outside world. Sure, I would have appreciated a harsher comeuppance for Waller, but I find this ending far more satisfying than the live-action films, because it gives us at least some sense of triumphant victory and serves as a drastic change from the movie's start. Nothing much changes between the beginning and the ending of Suicide Squad, making for a rather pointless and unrewarding climax. I think I've made it more than obvious that I believe Hell to Pay is far superior than the live-action Suicide Squad movie. To simply put it, Hell to Pay is just a really, really fun movie, while the live-action film is not. I just find it too cynical, too boring, too muddled, too confusing. Now, I do know that this film has a hardcore fan base, and if you enjoy it, that's great, all power to you, I'm not judging you.